Hello everyone and welcome to the Green Man channel. Hope you're doing good and well. So it's time for a video here where I'm taking on a very big challenge of ranking every single studio album from Nightwish, Epica and Within Temptation from my least favourite to my favourite. I'm going to be taking on 26 studio albums here and doing this ranking. And yes, I have separately ranked these bands' discographies in the past in separate videos, but never have I ever ranked them all together in one giant symphonic metal list, which is what we're doing here today. Now, of course, I've seen many rankings and tier lists for things like the Big Four in thrash metal before, but I'm doing my own spin here and doing what I would refer to as a ranking here for all the studio albums of the Holy Trinity of symphonic metal. So just a couple of final things to say before I crack on with this rather big list here, and that is to say, this is very much my own list and ranking. Do drop your own in the comments, recognising it's good to have differences and differences in tastes. That's what art and music is all about. And lastly, if you're new to the channel, do drop a like and a sub if you like my content. And I'm getting a little bit closer to 666 subs. I'm aiming for 666 subs because, of course, it's the number of the beast. It's a very metal number, so it'd be cool to get to that milestone. And let's crack on with this ranking. Without any further ado, my least favourite album is Something Has to Come at the bottom here, and it's Within Temptation and Resist. So this album to me, it's kind of superficial sounding in a way. It's a bit overwhelmed in effects. And that kind of puts me off almost from the first song on this record. It's not a terrible album, but there's very little here I'd like to revisit. I enjoyed the last track, Trophy Hunter, and that's the only song I've ever really feel compelled to go back to. So this is easily my least favourite album. I'd say fairly easily my least favourite album on this list. That's Within Temptation's Resist. In fact, I can resist it. I can resist. I didn't take too long to think about that one, by the way. So next up, at number 25, we've got Nightwish and Human Nature. A very divisive album this. For me, I found this very disappointing as a Nightwish fan. I thought that the previous album, In This Form's Most Beautiful, held a lot of promise. But this album really didn't deliver for me. It felt a bit half-baked. You had one side which was, some Nightwish songs with Thor's vocals in, but it felt just without any kind of force or power in a lot of those songs. And the second side was just really orchestral, like an orchestral soundtrack effectively. Very little else for me to really go for as a Nightwish fan, or really to enjoy. So that's why Nightwish Human Nature comes in at number 25. At 24, we've got Angels Fall First, another Nightwish album, but don't worry, the Nightwish army out there, things get a little bit better from here on in. So Angels Fall First, really, I just think is a very raw sounding first Nightwish album. You can tell they've not found the Nightwish formula, as it were, yet. There's some stuff on here I actually like, which is why it's not lower or bottom, because I do like a couple of songs. I like some of the power metal-esque tracks like Tutankhamun and Elven Path, for instance. But yeah, this one comes in at number 24. At 23, we've got another Within Temptation album, so no Epica albums yet. Where are the Epica albums? They're coming soon, or at least one of them is. Within Temptation's Hydra, again, suffers from the sort of problems I felt with Resist a little bit, but I like Hydra a little more. I find some of the melodies and some of the songs a little bit more memorable here. Don't understand that guest vocal track with Howard because it's mixed so badly that you can barely hear Howard for a lot of the song, which is part of Initial I Take with that song. And yeah, this album is okay, but certainly one of my least favourites in this list of 26. So that's Hydra. I do enjoy the Paradise track with Ty. I meant to mention that. I do enjoy that track. Next up at number 22, we've got Enter. Another Within Temptation album. Within Temptation fans are already going to be absolutely hating me at this point. But yeah, Enter for me is number 22. I think, again, it's a bit like with the debut Nightwish album. Basically, Within Temptation are finding the formula that works for them. It's just their first album. I think Sharon's vocals are yet to she's yet to really realise how her vocals work best for her, I feel like, on this album. So yeah, just a kind of cool gothic sound about it, but other than that, I don't find, again, much here I want to revisit. So that is why Enter comes in at number 22. Now at number 21, we've got the first Epica album here, which is Consigned to Oblivion. It was their second studio album, released back in 2005. And I like quite a lot of what this has to offer, actually, but it is a bit of a transitional album for the band, I think, because it comes between the debut album, which was, quite operatic actually, and a little bit less kind of expansive. And it comes before Divine Conspiracy, which is where I feel like the Epica formula was really established. So it's a bit of an in-betweeny kind of record, this, and you can hear that. I think it's like they're trying to find something a bit newer, particularly with the way they develop their instrumental sections and things like that throughout the songs. And, you know, they're finding what really works with the Epica setup. And I just feel like in Consigned to Oblivion that's the case. Do enjoy tracks like Last Crusade, Quietus and Trois Vierges with the legendary Roy Khan of Camelot. So I do like some stuff on here. But yeah, it's probably my least favourite Epica album of the bunch. Coming in number 22. Alright, 21. At number 20, we've got The Heart of Everything by Within Temptation. Another controversial take, and another one that the Within fans are going to hate me for putting this low down. Here's the thing though, and I think, you know, maybe it's just my taste that comes into the equation a bit here, because I do think this is a well-produced album. It's very bombastic, it sounds epic, Sharon sounds superb, as she always usually does. But Heart of Everything for me just doesn't have anything that I find moves me much. It's just kind of, I don't feel emotionally much invested in it. I don't feel musically that the songs develop particularly well and get a little bit repetitive even for this Within Temptation album. So yeah, just don't really dig this one, despite some of what it has going for it. Heart of Everything only comes in at number 20. By this point, Within fans may well have left. Coming in next at number 19, we've got Endless Forms Most Beautiful. So Endless Forms Most Beautiful is what I said earlier. It's a promising album, I think. I don't think it's, for me, as exciting as a lot of past Nightwish albums. You know, it's very polished sounding. It's very, very clean, very, very smooth. But I like a bit of a rougher edge with my Nightwish. I like the heavy stuff. I like the power, the punch, all that kind of stuff. But this one for me kind of lacks that. I like the way it's put together. The compositional elements of it are pretty good. Thomas has done a pretty good job, I think, with a lot of the songs, and his input's pretty good here as well. But yeah, other than that, Endless Forms Most Beautiful comes in at number 19. So, you know, I've been very kind to Epica so far, but that's where the kindness temporarily will end, because the next 3 albums on my list, from numbers 18 up to 16, are all Epica albums. So if I haven't isolated all 3 fan bases yet, this might be the time all 3 fan bases leave and moan and whinge, or whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do. Coming in at number 18 is Design Your Universe. Really good album, very engaging. But despite that, I never feel particularly hooked into this record. I do love certain individual songs. Tides of Time is a masterpiece of a song. Absolutely love Unleashed as well. But a lot of the rest of the album just kind of does its, you know, just kind of flows, just goes along. And, you know, at times I feel like Epica slightly overcook their music for me. They go a bit too overcooked. And that's actually my issue with the next 2 albums on my list as well. At 17 is Omega. Again, actually, this album was my number 1 Epica album. So the Green Man has done a complete U-turn on his own Epica ranking here, because I've put this one much lower down than I thought I would. But on revisiting it, I'm like thinking to myself, this is, in some ways, it is a brilliant album, and I stand by what I said before. But in other ways, the other albums from Epica, I find that actually I think I now enjoy those more. And it's the thing with Epica is that out of all these 3 bands, they're the ones I seem to change my mind with the most. Interesting. But yeah, so Omega, I love Seal of Solomon, I love Gaia, I love Rivers, I love quite a lot of the rest of this album, but over time, it just hasn't lasted the test of time for me, this one, since it came out in 2021, and since I ranked it at number 1, I think in 2022 or 2023. Next up at number 16, number 16, we've got The Holographic Principle by Epica. I'm struggling to keep track at this point. The Holographic Principle by Epica, it's a heavier, more death metal inclined album, you know. I almost am tempted to compare this album a little bit to a Flesh God Apocalypse album, because it just takes a much harder, aggressive approach with a lot of the songs. But it's a really good album. You know, I think at this point in my list, we're at all the albums that I can easily put on. All of these symphonic metal albums now, I would almost say I love everything from here on in, actually. So just to stress that, if you're annoyed with my ranking, just to stress everything from this point on, I really enjoy. So Holographic Principle, Divide and Conquer, Beyond the Matrix, and Once Upon a Nightmare. All three of my favourite tracks, and they're all right in the middle of the album. I really like those songs on the Holographic Principle, and I enjoy the themes that Epica use, you know, the kind of sci-fi type themes as well. Coming in at 15, we've got Yesterwind, which was on my year-end list. This is, of course, Nightwish's Yesterwind. Sorry, I should say the name of the band before I say the name of the album. But Yesterwind is a solid return for me, return to form after the very disappointing Human Nature. And I think Floor is much better used, and her vocals and the power of her vocals you can hear more in more of the moments of the bigger tracks, like Something Whisper Follow Me. I love her vocal performance in Children of Atta. I love a lot of what Floor has to offer in this record. And I think, yes, it's more cinematic style Nightwish, and I'm less into cinematic Nightwish than I am the classic era of Nightwish. But despite that, I really appreciated this album and I thoroughly enjoyed it, which is why it got to number 9 in my 2024 year-end list, and also why it is this high up in my list. Coming up at 14, we've got the first of what I call the Dark Horse albums on this list. This is Epica's Requiem for the Indifferent, which once upon a time, no pun intended, I was very indifferent towards. But as time has gone on, this is another Epica album I've U-turned on, and I've completely changed my mind on. I actually really enjoy this album now. I appreciate it differently to how I once did. I love Storm the Sorrow, Guilty Demeanour, Stay the Course, Avalanche. There's just an abundance of great Epica songs actually on this album. When you really kind of listen and sit down and sort of listen to the songwriting elements, I think, and things like that, this is actually a pretty great Epica release. So that's Requiem for the Indifferent at 14. At 13, we're halfway through the list now. At 13, we've got The Silent Force. This Within Temptation album, I really do enjoy, genuinely. I think this is a great album. It somewhat suffers from some of what I said about The Heart of Everything being a little predictable. And for me, you know, going for an epic sound without always having a substance behind it, you know, very formulaic. But the Within Temptation formula here is pretty amazing. It's pretty awesome, and I do feel an emotion, certainly partly because of the great vocals of Sharon, but I do feel an emotion coming in to this record. So that's why The Silent Force comes in at 13. I like See Who I Am, Memories, and It's the Fear as 3 examples of favourite songs from this album. Now next up we get to number 12, which is Imaginarium from Nightwish. We've got a couple of Nightwish here coming up. So Imaginarium from Nightwish, a very theatrical album, a little bit overstays its welcome for me, this one, but I do enjoy a lot of what it has to offer. You know, some really good longer tracks. Absolutely love the album opener, Storytime, an all-time Nightwish best for me, that track. Love Rest Calm, Arabesque. There's a lot of good cuts on this one. That's why Imaginarium here comes in at number 12. At number 11, we've got Oceanborn. A record I thought I might put slightly higher up, and this is what I'm going to also label as a bit of a Nightwish dark horse, because it came very early on in their discography. I think it's sometimes forgotten about since all of their big, epic, orchestral, you know, 2000s albums and 2010s albums. It gets forgotten that you also have some gems the further you go back into Nightwish's discography, and you got this one. This is Oceanborn, and it's a great power metal, symphonic power metal kind of a record. I love the keyboards, I love a lot of the guitar riffage, and Taya sounds great. Her operatics are, at times, some of the more memorable operatics we get from Taya during her era from the band, I think, as well. And there's a couple of other albums which I'm going to talk about shortly too, but yeah, great album. Now we're down to the top 10. At number 10, we've got Mother Earth from Within Temptation. Not Nightwish. I nearly said Nightwish again. This is getting too difficult. At number 10, we've got Mother Earth by Within Temptation. I love this album. Love its folky touch. Love the simpler tracks actually on here, where I think the songwriting is genuinely really good. And there's lots of hooks. There's lots of moments in this record I enjoy. I love Sharon singing on here. I love that she uses her higher register, but slightly less regularly than in some of her other albums, I think. Well, in the bigger songs, she still delivers her belters, but you get some quieter, more restrained tracks on here, like with Never Ending Story, I think it is. There is one other as well, I think, that I really enjoy called Deceiver of Fools, and that's a bigger track, that one. Coming in at number 9, we've got another Within track, Within album, and this is called Bleed Out. This was their most recent release from 2023, and one which I thought was really forgotten about by a lot of people, including myself. And yet it's a bit of a banger, this album, and it's still one I'm revisiting at this point. You know, a lot of albums, you end up going back to them maybe for a month or two, but then you leave them for a long time, you don't go back to them for ages. But with this Within album, I've gone back to it a lot since 2023. We are now in 2025, so that shows promising signs that I am genuinely really enjoying this album. It justifies its number 9 spot on this list. I love this album. It's like almost Within Temptation core. By that I mean it's like it's blending with metalcore and a modern style a bit more in this record, but doing so effectively, not like with Resist, but it's doing so with really great songs, some good song structures and songwriting. The Sharon moments are great. I love that guest tracks on here work much better for me than they did on both Resist and Hydra. So I think overall this is a much, much better Within album that deserves its spot in my top 10 here. At number 9, beating even Mother Earth, which I wasn't expecting. I don't think it was above Mother Earth when I did my ranking with Hector, so that's a bit of a change up here. Coming in at number 8, we got Dark Passion Play by Nightwish. Absolutely classic album. Yes, it was Annette's first album, Annette Olsen. I thought she did a great job though. Yes, slightly different singing style to Taya, but all the songs are fantastic. They're long, but they're moving. They are well composed. Lots of the usual elements of Nightwish that I love are in here as well. Big heavy guitar riffs. Marco sounds terrific on bass and with his vocal moments too. Dark Passion Play is a glorious album, and that's why it comes in here at number 8. But there are still 7 albums I like that bit more. Now number 7 is maybe the shock of the list, but I say that and I feel it odd that not many other people give this album much love. You know, I've seen a few other rankings genuinely online and on YouTube for Epica, and the Phantom Agony is always ranked low down. The Phantom Agony is my number 7. And it is, I think, a superb debut. Easily, by miles, the best debut album from any of these bands. Simone was 18 as well when she was performing these songs. And yet they sound incredible. And she sounds, her vocal lines are stunning here. Love the operatics, the crescendos, the melodies. It's all here to enjoy, really. And I don't understand, am I the only person that sort of, loves this album as much as I do? And, Phantom Agony fans, I want to hear from you. If you're a big fan of the Phantom Agony like me, I need to hear from you. I'm sorry, I need to hear from you. But I'm not the only one that thinks this album is a bit of a hidden gem, a little bit of a masterpiece. Maybe that's a stretch, but, well, it is at number 7 here. I love Sensorium, I love Run for a Fool, and the title track, The Phantom Agony, on that one. So let's move on to number 6 now, which is Century Child by Nightwish. Classic Taya era album, the one before the big one, if you will. Won't talk too long about this one. I love this album a lot. It's just got the classic Taya style. It's got Marco on this album. Love Ever Dream, Ocean Soul, some classic songs, very memorable. Beautifully, sort of a good production here as well. I particularly like the way this one was produced, I think. So yeah, Century Child's my number 6. Coming in at 5, we've got Wishmaster, another Nightwish classic, another Taya era classic for me. Actually, for a long time, this was probably my number 1 Nightwish album, but I say that it can so often flip between this and Once, actually, to be honest. It's always between Wishmaster and Once. But yeah, love Wishmaster, and that is my number 5. More of the kind of symphonic power metal era of Nightwish. Coming in next at number 4, we've got The Divine Conspiracy by Epica. And this is basically going back to what I said earlier. This, for me, is where Epica really found their effective formula. Using some elements from the first album, some elements from the second, kind of combining them, working out what works best for Epica, I feel like The Divine Conspiracy. And there are so many classic songs on this one, right? You've got Falls of Damnation, Sancta Terra, Never Enough. Never Enough is one of my favourite Epica songs of all time. Sancta Terra is amazing actually as well. Coming in at 3, we've got The Unforgiving by Within Temptation. spoken about this album very recently on the channel, I feel, and it was one of my albums of the year for 2011, my album of the year for 2011. I think this suits the band. I feel like I wouldn't mind if they did this more often, you know, this kind of just going straight up rock songs, just using Sharon's voice pretty much as the kind of the central magnet almost of the band, with her brilliant and memorable vocals and choruses on this record. This is a really effective thing for Within Temptation that I just think works better in this kind of style, and it's why it's actually my favourite Within Temptation album here, coming in at number 3. So by process of elimination, you probably work out what my number 2 and 1 are. My number 2 is Once. Again, this is my album of the year for 2004. Do I really need to talk much about this here? You know, this is a classic to me. You know, I think it really launched Nightwish's careers and just made them legendary, particularly in the realm of symphonic metal, and it's why I consider them, and why many other people I probably consider them, as part of that holy trinity of symphonic metal. Just think it's classic. Love its gothic sound, its gothic beauty. Love tracks like Nemo. Really love this one. Really love Ghost Love Score as the epic towards the end, and they could have finished the album on that note, to be honest. I would possibly love this one even more, and maybe it would be my number 1. But my number 1 symphonic metal album from these 3 bands is Epica's Quantum Enigma. I love this. I actually love that title track as well, Quantum Enigma. You know, Quantum Enigma. It's a really great track. Really great album. Love so much of this record. It just offers up sort of everything I love about Epica. It's really memorable. All the Simone moments, some of my favourite Simone moments are actually, you know, throughout this record. Essence of Silence as well. I mean, I just really love that song. Victims of Contingency. It's just track after track on this record is what makes this a great album. It just like back-to-back, non-stop, brilliant symphonic metal tracks, flows beautifully. All I can ask for, really, for an Epica album, and it's probably, yeah, I think this is my favourite at this point. Maybe the Green Man will change his mind once again, but I love this album, and I think it's actually my favourite from all 3 of these bands, and it wins the title of the best album of the Holy Trinity of symphonic metal. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I think this might end up being my last list type video or ranking before I move places. I do have some reviews planned that I'm going to try and squeeze in before then, but otherwise from me, until next time everyone, thanks for watching and bye for now.